Good morning. My name is Holly Gordon. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. I am currently the assistant principal at Yale Elementary. I'm also a doctoral candidate at East Texas A&M and I'm superintendent certified. That's the direction I'm going anyway. And so today is going to be recorded for my classes, strictly used only for that doctoral process. Again, thank you for being here. But the thing that we're going to take a look at is I know that each of you have dug into the end of year data, but what are we going to do with it at this point? So let's take a look at just some of that review of what we've dug into. I have included star 3 through 8. This is over the last 3 years. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of deep dive time on this because I know you guys already have done that. We have taken a look at the EOC as well. Just a moment to take a look at that. And then some information that I got that I thought was pretty interesting was by district. We always are looking at our comparison districts. And of course, there's going to be those standouts that were like, 85% is pretty high. But when we take a look at where Richardson is landing and that percentage change, it's pretty on par with our comparison district in both math and in reading.
So can you go back to the math?
Absolutely.
So we're above the state in both.
Above the state in both.
And Dallas County, are we above in both?
Does Dallas County mean DISD or?
No, it's.
There are portions of Dallas County that are not DISD. They're also
Like we're Dallas County, but we're not DISD.
Oh, so it's just a combination of different
Yeah.
schools
Yeah.
located in Dallas County. I
think it's probably like all of them then, because it's like state,
Yeah.
county,
Yeah.
and then it will list each one separately.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Leaper just gave this to me yesterday. I'm like, I didn't throw that in because this is great information. That comparative.
I love this when we start rather than just looking at ourselves, but looking outside.
Me too.
You'll go back to the map.
Will you be able to share this with us?
Yes.
I will.
The presentation?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Is
I'll
this
be
come from
because
someone
we
in?
don't have that.
This one, yes, it was just the commit
Okay,
stuff.
I got some of that last night. I haven't dug into it. Thank you for including.
Of course. Yeah, please do. Please, this is interactive. This is absolutely not sit and get it. All right. I knew I put you on the front for a reason. All right. So again, this is that map data. We took a look at that star data. This was all presented to the board. You've seen this before. The trends are up, but they're kind of up. So that's both in reading and math. And I didn't include the sub-pops breakdowns, but again, it's the same. Like we're making some progress.
Holly, did you have Spanish reading on there too? I saw the English, maybe you had Spanish too. Oh, okay.
Just the
This is English, okay. I think Spanish is the same trend from what we looked at,
It is. Okay. So this again, you've seen, but what does that mean? What does all of the numbers mean for us in terms of student outcomes? That we're always focusing on that. Every student, teacher, leader. We're always focusing on the data and what that means for the kids in front of us and what that means for the targeted intervention and enrichment opportunities. But when I was thinking through, this is kind of a conversation we were having earlier, again, you've seen the numbers, but what's going to be the best use of our time and focus today? One of the things that Dr. Leeper and I talked through was building that curriculum capacity in terms of the types of questions and what does it mean really to test, and what does it mean to have content knowledge versus being able to show that content knowledge on these big assessments. So what does it mean when we have these numbers, translating that into how we're delivering the curriculum. So the thing about that is that there's a little bit of some history with what the data means and what assessment means and how we're delivering that. I am a quote queen, so I couldn't just pick one. Take a look at those 4 and think on it. What is one that stands out and why? Even though these are very, like, just a little different lens quotes, I felt like they had that perseverance piece in common. What does this mean? Anybody can pop in. Is there one that stood out to you more than another?
I think for me, the top one in the left, the only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. And I think about the different stakeholders we work with, teachers, like how easy it is to get defeated, and then that changes your expectation, how you show up for work every day. So I think that's important to make sure we're using data to move the needle, but also like helping people understand it and not lose sight of our task in education.
That global perspective of all of the people involved. Absolutely. Who else?
I also think about choosing your habits carefully. They decide your future, and I know that when we went to that day that we got to spend with Paul Bambrick, and everybody sort of looked at how we're spending our time. And even though it's easy to, plan ahead, and it's also easy for your plan to get derailed, I think it's that consistency and just looking at how are we spending our time, and every stakeholder, and sometimes that is geared from doubts that we have, because we may think, oh, well, I need to spend more time here because of this need, not knowing that some of these other things will move the needle if it's done consistently.
The how we spend our time. Yes, which is 100% that curricular implication that we're talking about.
So I'm gonna combine kind of the last 2, be sassy with the one on the left. Like, don't ever tell me I can't do something. And I'll show you, and we all have challenges, and some of us have challenges just because of our content, what our content is. But I'll show you, and then I'll flip my hair and I'll sort of go, told you. But that's the never giving up. And what is winning? Winning is the never giving up, because you're never really a winner because the goal continues. So
The goal continues. Yeah. So I agree this time, but what does that mean moving down the road? The perseverance piece is consistently there. And how do we build that in? Knowing that this is what we're saying in terms of student outcomes, but knowing that, as we've talked several times now, there's always different pieces in terms of people and stakeholders that we're serving every day that have all the different needs. How are we spending that time to make sure they're getting this? Anyone else?
The last one, I used to tell my students something like that: failing isn't failing unless you quit. Otherwise, it's an opportunity to learn something new. So I told them, especially because they were elementary, so it took them over 100 tries before they got the light bulb to stay on. And now look where we are. So it's one of those, just, kind of embedding that. And with science, we do so many investigations and then actual hands-on activities where they're trying to make something work or make sense of something. So it's kind of like you just kind of have to keep going in an engineering aspect until you find the route that works best. So it's something to change the mindset a little. Just because we get it wrong once doesn't mean it's actually wrong, just means you haven't learned it yet.
Just haven't learned it yet. We have not quit. We're continuing.
I'm with Jen on the last one.
Mhm.
And for me, honestly, the number, the 1 or 2 percentage doesn't make sense to me. Because theoretically, it seems to statistically, significant or not, we don't know yet.
Mhm.
So probably it's not, it depends on how we define the failure. So probably need to look at what they really grow and what they really failed. So we need to take a look into all the conditions, and then we can, before we release the number to the public, probably we need to educate them on that first. And on the other one, so we never quit. Yeah, actually that's the real meaning of education. We should help our kids on their lifelong learning. And for us, we also kind of push ourselves to never give up learning. So we help our kids, and the kids also push us to keep learning.
Absolutely. You made the comment, what are the conditions of the numbers? And that spoke to me because, especially with my own kiddo, like we all have that student or our own that we have in the back of our minds when we're sitting doing the work every day. And I think about how he really doubted himself. This was a classic dyslexia, dysgraphia kiddo, had a really difficult time reading. That impacted everything else. By the time he got to high school, it was like, oh, I passed my biology EOC first time, no problem. I do great day to day. My day-to-day assessments look good. I can get to the curriculum. I know what I'm doing. I know what you're saying. I can process it. I can tell you. But when it came down to the actual big assessments, it took 3 times to pass that English 1 EOC. I'm like, how are we doing like A-level work from day to day? That number looks completely different. There's a different condition than something that is we're not addressing when it comes to that big test. And that's part of it. Like that they know that anxiety builds and that confidence, they're just beat down, like, okay, well, I failed it once, okay, I failed it twice. Like now what? Now what am I supposed to do? And so how do we keep that in mind from day to day when we're looking at building in curriculum steps for all of the stakeholders to grab onto and move forward with? Like that, this is a real story. Like how are they accessing that content? Thank you. So, how are they accessing it? It's through different strategies. Like we know that we're building in different strategies consistently, and this is where it gets into that conversation of, well, are we like teaching to the test? Do we know, TEKS XYZ.7 is gonna show up, so we're gonna pound that one. Like, is that teaching to the test? No, because they know the content, but they're still having trouble showing it on those big assessments. And so we're talking about a life skill. Like these are things that reframing the thinking of how we're addressing our curriculum and getting it to them, that life skill you're always going to have. There's always going to be something you have to critically analyze. There's always going to be something that's going to be a little out of reach and challenging. But how am I going to get there? What are the access strategies that I'm using and that we're giving them to access all of the things? Because someday they're going to have to take a TSI or a GRE or an SAT or some other thing that is going to be hard for them, and we would be remiss if we didn't give them those skills. So thinking through that they're doing great day to day, that we do have kiddos that are still not getting there on the assessments that we're tracking, but they're doing okay day to day, that the CIAs and things that we're, performance assessments, all that stuff, they're doing great. What tools are we giving them? So we're gonna dig into that a little bit more. One of the things that I want you guys to do to make this time the most intentional is to choose a greater content that in your data needed improvement. So you're gonna pull up that curriculum. We're gonna go to Unit 1, then we're gonna pull up Cameo. And we need to take a look at the practice tests and the questions that align with that unit, because If, again, they're not able to show what they know on a particular type of question, then that's gonna have implications for how we're making sure that those steps are built into the curriculum. So take a look there. Determine a place to embed that particular test strategy, test question type. What is it that we need to build in? And take a look at those first few weeks. Typically we have a weekish where we get to know the kids, get everybody kind of figured out. But within those first few weeks in your curriculum, take a look there, and then you're gonna partner up that Cambium piece to the curriculum, and we're gonna start figuring out how do we give them these access strategies? How are we building that in? Stop there, pause. Any questions? So at this point, I'm gonna just kind of come to you and meander. I'm gonna leave this up. There are a couple other questions about determining that question type, determine the strategy, how would you teach this? And I'm gonna go ahead and show you this. That if you will put that 4-square piece together for the thing that you decide, that piece of content and that question that you decide on. I'll go back to the instructions. I wanted you to give a quick look at the product that we're thinking through today. What prior knowledge are they needing? What vocabulary are they needing? What is the distractor, and what, again, access strategy are we giving them to make sure that that doesn't distract them? And what strategy is needed? If it is a new question type, it can be a visual, we need a little more practice with that inline question piece, the drag and drop, or those multiple answer pieces, whatever that is. It can be a visual, it can be bullets on that strategy needed. But what are those specific pieces that we need to embed so that the show of the assessment is being explicitly embedded and taught?
Yeah, I think any of the star grades. Thank you for the cancellation. Do you wanna do reading or math, and then are you thinking star or tell-pass? Or Cambium, I know she said star, but just thinking of
Because I think we just did the whole prevention, so you should be pretty familiar with it.
I know how to get to the release, but.
It does like it's a star, but I was thinking of the score
Yes.
validity or whatever that we did, and some things we learned about that.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, this sure might work.
okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, if you want to do that, can you
Yeah.
have last year's release and then, yeah, so our,
Okay, I know my story
So
was.
I'm looking at that 3-year comparison doc to star, I'm just curious how
so what specifically about.
So something that I've
reading.
been really working on is how to
So
extend
4th grade math,
and
we're 74%.
anything that you are finding in
Or sorry, that's 4th grade reading, 4th grade math, we're at 65%.
today.
3rd grade kind of mirrors that same trend, we're lower in math than reading, so I don't know what you wanna think about math.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
And I can access those units. Yeah. Okay, so.
So that's
I'm
something
thinking about 4th grade math, do we wanna do RISD, or do we want to look at Eureka, or? Not through Cambium, but the, yeah, you have to break down that campus and then, yeah, like,
Which one are you watching?
maybe the RISD side, so let's do that. Okay, so that's what I'll look at with the curriculum. Yeah, we're gonna do, RISD, but I know that it's teams are, it's gonna apply to either, just maybe in a different order or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
we're using last year's release because they're calling it
It's great one.
Fourth grade.
Yeah, that's the one thing about Candy, you have to go question by question by question by question.
Do you want me to tell you the main teak for that unit? Will that help to look through questions or?
Okay.
Okay.
Too many grades.
Okay.
I've
No.
got to be on my list today.
Oh my gosh. I need to do that at my house too though.
Oh, yeah, that was, I still gotta come in the other house.
Student season here is battery operated toy car moving across the room. What types of energy does the student use to see and to hear the toy car? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
see and hear. So they have to know sounds,
Mhm.
seeing as well.
Yeah.
But that's not a kind of energy, it's electrical, right? Battery operated.
Battery operated is electrical, so what types of energy does the student use to see and hear the toy?
So they're seeing and hearing these, but this is the kind of energy. But there's no heat, is it a light?
No, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be good.
So it's process of elimination, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a science teacher. I taught sixth grade science, so I have no fifth grade science.
The only thing about this one that does kind of get, like, in their question, like, what types
So I
of
think
energy.
once you get there, we should look for questions that are
What types of
4.2
energy does the
B.
student use to see?
Distraction.
Yeah, cause even I'm
And
honestly
then
like, okay,
from
we can make an
5G,
argument
we
about
find
that. That's fine, that's
misconceptions
fine.
and
Yeah.
undeveloped concepts. And once we pick our question,
Yeah.
I bet some of these will come up as distractor or kids miss it. What are you looking for? That's what I was gonna say, I'm glad you're doing that, because I haven't been in there in a minute, like I almost have to find our click sheet for, here, let me try to help you.
I'm just thinking this one is a mental, I thought I was going to the next one. This is
Holly, we haven't been in Cambium in a minute, which is the quickest way, like, we're back to our click sheet that you get in Cambium.
what you find is
Or
moving.
Where you were.
Oh, okay.
There should be a sign in.
Okay, yeah, we just haven't, I haven't been in there in a minute.
Sound entry too, but to
I was gonna say,
hear it is a effort.
It's pretty good, like they said.
And then to see it is like,
I don't think it's this
So these are
website.
what the student is using.
I'm gonna look for a
These
click
are
sheet
the
that we
type.
share with everybody,
That's the
that'll
type of
probably.
energy.
Might be
So
quicker.
it's a better
They
operated,
have so many
battery
websites for.
operated toy, so it would be electrical.
Yeah.
There's no
Like the
thermal components.
Henry
Right.
come up.
But I'm serious, so what type of energy does your student
There's a
use?
place that I've been going to, so it's Lead Wars
It's not
IQ
what type of energy
analysis.
are they using.
Okay.
And digging through
So
that.
that's the
So
start.
this is the link.
Because you're gonna see battery
But
power.
I'm gonna open it and then I'll send it
So it's
to you.
going, so it's mechanical and
This.
the battery.
So it is TEA, right?
This is the student using.
Yeah, so let me send you this link.
Would you mind bringing up the Foursquare activity?
Absolutely.
And I went with this first, and then I rethought and overthought and went with these. Does you know what I'm saying?
You pull out the answer key, just the. Cause
Okay, Clarice, I just sent you the link. Well, you pull that up and start this Foursquare. I don't know how things are relevant necessarily, but.
Would y'all pick?
We did 4.2B fourth grade math. And then we found the student misconceptions from the IMD, and we're gonna
Just
look
that was my
at,
initial, and
figure
then
out which question we're gonna focus on.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
looking
it's
for the question.
immediately they say
And then
battery
Cambium, yeah.
operated.
Which goes mechanical.
Okay,
And well, I pulled up a
I went to
question.
TA
I
really.
pulled
Yeah.
up
I
the
did what I
so
I did not, I did
Pretty
24.
math
I was just
question.
requesting access to 25 to make the Jill and filling out
Do I
another.
do the online practice test
I
or
think
the printed?
I think, well, I think the online, but I don't know, we'll try both.
Yeah.
Does the online?
Well, I know there's a way to do it.
I don't know.
The test.
You can,
So just the test.
They try both.
Pulls up. You don't have to go to the TV website, click it. It's a practice test, so it's not.
Well, if the older ones are
Yeah,
yeah.
but it's just like, the older ones, it looks exactly like that. But you have to do that from the side. Are they? Because then I pull all the stuff release off and use it as cut. What the?
We could do a forward IQ release for that too, if you wanted, like that's thinking part of it.
Yeah, so we'll, like all of our exit tickets now are legally saved, and we can get started, so all of the curriculum measures, actually, that we're embedding, that we're embedding, yes. That we're embedding. Yes.
And how would you
Not
like
me, that we're embedding.
that was the chart that
It is.
already.
Okay, so we picked
A lot of.
B.
Slash or dash?
Okay.
So it's all the different types of entities, because they do distinguish between them, so that's what I'm gonna, not gonna just write down here. Oh, are you putting that on your, yeah, and I'm gonna go print out this first one. Yeah.
So 4.2B.
Real quick, so I can pull it up. I don't know if it'll take care of it.
This is the value of the digit and whole numbers through 1,000,000 and decimals to the hundredth using expanded notation and numerals. So some of the vocabulary, we know that since are decimals.
So much. Did you send me a question?
Hundreds.
Yes, science, 5.6A, if you want that.
And leave a spot for us to put a question. I have like, we're gonna expanded notation.
You had how that was tested over here, yeah.
The battery operated component, like mentioning that the car was battery operated.
Which one's asking which question? Forward IQ analysis will do that for you. Okay, so third voltage, so
The process.
I'm also wondering if specifically it was tested in a drag and drop style, so they have to drag in and least to greatest or greatest to least and divide by the
You're expecting better out of it.
So delete forward release, like the IQ release would be a better way, maybe to look at.
Right.
I
Yeah.
like to do them
That's
together,
part of
like,
the
because the
question.
legal
That's
breaks
a
down a lot of the
strategy
coursework
too.
stuff, but
Read the question.
it doesn't,
And
You can't tell that.
yeah, it doesn't
drag and drop
necessarily
for
show,
it's
it tells you what type of question it is, but it doesn't necessarily show
And then.
specific question
have to
asked.
determine
Uh-huh.
what's important,
Gotcha.
what's the
Okay.
trash in the
So
question.
on K-mean, we can see like how it was asked,
I'm going to
the
print this
analysis
question
is,
out so
here's this
we
type of
can-
question, and
Yeah, that, what
You've
are
said
the,
this many
what is
times, and
asking
here's the vocabulary
for,
with it.
what within the question is what they're looking for. Every area. It's that testing vocabulary that sometimes messes us up quite a bit.
While you're navigating that place, I'm gonna write down prior knowledge, like what they should have gotten from third grade that builds on that.
Vocabulary.
Okay, so what is vocabulary needed for the actual question?
4.2B.
That's what, yeah. I sent it, I got it, so, yeah, I sent it to
Yeah,
you. Google or regular email?
a little bit, I'm looking at the
Yeah,
IMD,
thermal,
like a
mechanical,
little bit more of a
electrical,
detailed description, yes,
sound.
that is it, but,
Light.
represent the value of the digit in whole numbers through, I'm scattered numbers, I think this number is 1,000,000. Is it
a billion? Oh, okay,
So,
a billion.
like, cause they do need to distinguish
To
it
the
on
hundreds,
lines.
yeah, use the expanded notation
Yes,
in
so they do have to,
So another thing they need to know is just like numbers through a billion, right?
it says melts like a kettle, yeah. It's energy.
So just looking at the practice,
Yeah.
the practice problems on here,
Uh-huh.
it's, so it calls it decimals, it's like the big
Gotcha.
category, that's what's like, okay.
Yeah.
Then when we look at the question,
Well, the thing,
so
so here's
how is
interesting,
this
that's an
number
older
written in
sheet
expanded
that-
notation?
so
So
the
under
new one
vocabulary, they need to know what
like
expanded
is
notation
transformed.
means.
So there is something that.
And then they have
to
this
pay
broken
attention to.
down, and then they have to
And
put
they
it
do
inside here.
examples of energy.
Should
So
I say
Kansas
distracted?
City
This is a drag and drop.
something that's
Should I say
going.
distracted
They have,
factor is
you know,
extra
good
information?
examples of what
Okay.
is what qualifies as.
And when you
something
look at
each
these
time,
numbers, I
each
mean,
time.
it's like, what?
They need to be able to recall that because it's applied, so they're giving you
Okay.
a phenomena and then you have to apply that to that.
Then this is another example,
Yeah.
so it's also in written form.
In here.
You did put something about numbers in different forms or something.
I think it was
Expanded
notation.
A little too like distractor factor, how it says like, what am I hearing? Here's the light, here's the sound, here's the.
Actually, when.
That's it. Those
Well,
are
the
the only
two
two.
accessibility, the second one is
Sound.
Joe.
So then
I know, which is
you're
weird.
read it, because there isn't
Number
anything
of
within
miles
that
she
question
drove written,
that
oh,
is
they have to write it in
reducing
expanded
the
notation.
Question makes it way harder.
Definitely
So
got,
you have
Yeah, because I had it right at first, and then I had
prior
made it wrong.
knowledge.
And then I read it,
finished.
I'm pulling this from
Yeah.
mine, and I'm like the one that, and I'm the one that doesn't have as much of the content. You know what I mean, because I don't teach it and I haven't just been taught
Let's
it.
see.
You would think that I'm a.
Go with the, and so what would that test?
Not only do they need to know, because, I mean, one's
Yeah.
considered
Yeah.
this side
Yes.
of the,
Honestly,
of the
in
numbers,
this particular
that
case,
would
I
be
mean, look
prior
for,
knowledge.
look for
Then they
evidence
have
of
to
the
learn
answer
what
within the
happens
question.
to, basically to the
look
right and
for-
to the
look
left
for
of
your
that
yes,
decimal.
yes.
And how that,
And there's the distractors aren't just in the answer, the distractors. are
Prior
in
to
the
this
question.
grade,
Well,
they
keep in mind,
composed and
this is
decomposed
light. There is
numbers
no,
look
like,
only for
source
100,000 units. So
Right.
that's a
Yeah,
huge
you need to understand.
jump, so you really have to understand how place value works
right,
too.
that's what I'm saying, if you don't know this side of the decimal,
Oh,
you're
yes.
getting to this side of the decimal,
It's
it
gonna
would be
be
like,
every unit, so like every one.
So
of those.
that's,
cause it's almost like the mirror of it, right? So,
So, despite my lack of, tweeting.
phase 10
Did you
relationships,
see what I tweet
which is kind of what you're saying, right, that
I
each
don't
side
too
of the
much
decimal
because
and how
of
they
Porn
work.
Star took over my Twitter account a couple of years ago.
100,000.
Remember placing a bag test, taking
Thank you, I just got
collectively done this, so where would we embed this into the actual, contract?
Which isn't really this deep
So,
compared to order, but.
Now, I will say this, this is kind of where I get hung up between just this.
Okay, and then the next definitely is fractions. Okay, they've previously only used the decimal in relation to money, is what it said.
So,
Previous grade levels use the decimal point in money only.
They're going to immediately see battery operated toy and fixed electrical, because that's what they understand, that battery is form of electrical energy.
I don't love
So
the way it's worded.
then it's like, you almost have to make them read the question twice. What types of
Okay,
energy is
so-
used to see?
Is there anything else we would need to capture here? So that tells us what they should come to us with.
See and what you
Is there anything else on the
So,
vocabulary you
like,
think?
Analyzing the
Um,
question specifically.
Like, I don't know that you need to know,
Then go back and.
like, place value as a vocabulary, but you need to know it as a concept, right? But I guess this is what this
I don't know if you
is.
wanna say like,
Go about like our,
um,
the strategies or.
yeah, as a vocabulary word, it's a little hard to say.
Yeah, but I'm gonna put it here, like, it's strong.
This to me.
Okay, so then the strategy needed, maybe me and you like need to work one of the,
I'm looking to see what ChatGPT.
oh, perfect, love it.
So, there's an anchor chart with whole numbers and decimal, like they have a ladder. Language supports, like this digit is in the place, in this place has this value, which would be, because if you're looking at here, like they're all ones, right? There's a 1 and a 0, but it all represents something different in each place, right?
You see it, you hear it.
So,
What do you
I think they need to
Honestly, that
practice
makes sense. So that's something that.
saying what that is. That makes sense to me.
Science elementary
back to your, oh, okay, so definitely, we could say a strategy is an anchor chart showing place value on both sides of the decimal.
First for properties, because they have to describe.
And then of course, you mentioned it here about the
You
base
know, that's something that we do as early as that, so that's why it's so important in our early grades that they make sure they're taking time.
So thinking about our curriculum and thinking about how they test, like most kids won't have actual base 10 blocks when they test, right? But if we're thinking curriculum, that's a way to build understanding. So do we wanna say that too? Use,
I would say they need to have practice. So they need to practice with the concrete, but they've gotta represent it in written form as well.
Well, that's it, that's the.
So whether I do concrete and then write it, or pictorial and then write it, like if that doesn't loop around, doing it here by itself is not enough. Like they need to be able to write it.
Process of elimination.
Cause like in this example, it's all ones and zeros. It's just where are they? And they matter where they're placed, right?
I'm thinking through that if I'm just looking at that on the screen, like, so I practiced it and I'm like, Dave, got it. What am I gonna be able to do to translate it to the screen? Like, how am I gonna be able to take my concrete to written to digital? How is that strategy gonna translate?
so then I also like though what you said is another strategy, I don't know how it's worded, but like regular in instruction, having students listen, speak, read, write around this vocabulary, right? Because if you don't do that, like I didn't understand base 10 until I taught second grade, which sounds awful to say. Like I memorized it and I could do it, but then then we learned a base 3 and a base 5.
Yeah.
Teacher training and my mind was blown. But I didn't learn math where I was ever dialoguing about it, you know, it was just like, so do we wanna say, sentence stems?
Yeah.
With academic vocabulary.
And name the place value each number, how it represents something. Depending on, and they need to say it, they need to say it. This is 5/10.
Using and naming each digit and discussing to understand value.
It's not 5/10 anymore, it's 5/10, yes.
Battery operated.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like we have these. Do you wanna look at the questions to see what was the most missed to help us
So the
understand the
distractor,
distractor?
to me, I'm thinking, cause if we look at these two examples, so there's this one where they're in a parentheses, right? And so it's like 4 times what plus 2 times what is gonna make this big
But it
number,
doesn't need to just say that. This is.
which is up here. Cause they know that the 4 is in the thousands place,
This is.
so they have to know
But this is really.
what it represents here, and then they have to know which of these is 1,000,
4 times 1,000, yeah.
right?
What was the,
That
is
to
it
me is a
show?
distractor because they're having to do multiple steps to get the answer. It's not as easy as just like, oh,
Mhm.
here it is and I just pick this and I pick that, you know, they're having to do it broken up this way.
Mhm.
But that's not.
Can you tell what the correct answer is and then what people chose as the
Yeah,
next missed?
so it says here, which one is the answer? It just tells me what they
I know, it used to show that, right,
Well, we
like the
haven't
data for what was, correct answer is
Like,
A,
it's
is
we're
wait.
creating them now, but this is
Oh,
something.
correct
No, it
answer
just
is
says what
1,000.
it is, but it doesn't tell me
Oh,
like.
okay, it doesn't tell you
which
which
ones.
Okay.
in
Oh, because
But the
there's not an
analysis-
ABC is why, duh,
The analysis is that 68 people got full
Yeah.
credit
I gotcha.
or percentages,
Oh.
right, so.
I do wanna give you a little forewarning, we've got about 15 minutes left together today. So make sure you're looking at where the embedding is happening. Where are the content connection strategies happening in the curriculum? Where can we embed everything that we've just decoded into the curriculum?
Oh, there it is, the answer was
Oh, okay.
76%.
But the only reason that one has it like that is because there's an A, B, C, D to choose from, right? Because the drag and drop could have been a whole infinite of.
Right.
Yeah, wrong chances. Okay, so but looking at that one, B was the correct answer, 76% got it. Oh, so kids did well in that. I'm kind of surprised. Wonder why C and D says we didn't TEA.
So it was A. I think
They just haven't broken down yet how people chose, but kids did well on that one. What was the correct choice on the other one?
It didn't show, it just said.
Oh,
credit.
68%
They
got
did.
credit.
Right, so that means they did answer it.
The new ones that we have.
They did answer
So,
that.
we
They
can go
did.
back
68 and
to that right now.
76.
But I also think
But we
this-
don't have our locals, locally, our kiddos
that's
just
true too. But I also think like this peak, whatever that breakdown says, the more ways you have kids doing this, it's gonna help them with everything they do in math, right? Because place values. Yeah.
Further
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
acquaintance.
Okay, so looking now. at
And
the
understanding
curriculum.
there's such a big jump from third grade
So might as well
to
kill two
fourth
birds.
So
grade.
there's a section
Like,
under the.
Knowing this is the first unit they start off
There's a
with,
section
for some, they're having
but
to
it can
review,
also.
and then build
So
up
one
from
of the
it.
things here that we're applying for.
But I
is
think
to
as many
reflect
opportunities as they can practice with it, even if it's like,
So that's where I think this is.
I remember we used to do it when they walk in and
For
they
before,
for
to
little,
kind of go through like how are we going to
math
look at our
review questions tomorrow, and it just
to
is like a daily,
practice what we're doing here.
we do this
So they're
daily.
looking at each question.
Let's
and
write
they're
this
assessing it.
number, let's write this number, let's say this number,
I'm looking back at their misconceptions to see if
So
there's anything else
this is my thoughts
here.
when you come back. This is what
The first one is some students may not understand that their habit of following 0 to 9 sequence and then increasing a digit in the next place goes on for infinity. I don't think that's, I mean, I would agree.
Yeah.
Probably many students don't
And you
understand that.
have to do this.
Some students think representing the value of digits in whole numbers using expanding
So you get like
notation
a
can only be
mid-year,
written in one way
and then
rather
you
than
need
multiple.
to say,
So kind of
okay,
like
so
that
we're gonna walk
problem if it has
off
to be 4
And
times
now
1,000
we're
versus
going to
somebody writing 4,000.
So it's gonna be more student independent.
Some students may rely too strongly on money as a decimal model.
Correct.
The decimal point is merely a symbol to separate dollars
So like
and
that's something that they're
cents,
looking at.
rather than a symbol to indicate the unit to its immediate left.
I think it's hard to figure that out because
All of my CNIG, I can make it clear.
how do you make it take?
I like this distractor too that I really think kids do is, it says some students may use whole number ideas to compare or understand decimals. So then they think that 0.89 is greater than 0.9. Right, because like 89 is bigger than 9. So I'm gonna say students.
Nice and big.
I've heard it.
No, yeah, and we.
Realize and understand that's why I asked her to just turn around and go ahead and touch them.
Whole number.
I know our elementary RLA, and we've talked about it, they're working on it. They were talking about it more. But see, when I, okay, so, help me, cause I don't.
Okay, so then if I look at, if I look at
I
unit
think this, honestly,
one,
this is what I think that this could replace, like every 2 weeks, this could essentially be our model.
Pace tool.
And then their teaching.
Pacing tool one's named represent values of the digits, and then pacing tool two is decimals. So I'm gonna look at pacing tool two. Do you know where to, do you wanna look at the curriculum with me, or do you want me to just talk through it? Do you know where to get to?
And you pose the question, and as you go to it, that group has to decide if they have a correct answer, and they answer and give their justifications. And so that's a way to do it, where it's movement and it's collaborative, and the teacher's there to model, maybe finding, oh, to that decimal. Does that make sense? It does. Well, no, but you do, but you can. I think, okay, so what distractors did you see? But it's just a way to get the kids involved in it.
Yeah.
Why
Then they answer
right
back
or wrong, and then you bring it back together.
I think like your first like couple of months of this will probably.
I'd love to.
Very much model instructions, and then I think you can move into.
I think
Like
this would, a good place to embed something would be unit one, pacing tool
Cause if you just say four corners,
Day.
Yeah. No, each one gets assigned a block.
day 5. Cause the learning objective is. Okay, I do wanna give you guys an opportunity to share
So in the next like 2.5
Actually, that
minutes,
would be day 4.
we'll finish up your Foursquare work, and I'll have one of the groups share out.
Learning objective. So I think, oh, this is not a distractor factor, this is where. So I think they have a learning objective, and so for us, the tie into this would be also a language objective.
Like, let's comment back, just give feedback on what we're doing. Like, where do you think that person
So-
can add something, or do you think they
The learning objective where I can represent the value of
It does the whole thing, and then I go back in and I fix it.
a set of decimal numbers in expanded notation.
Talk to your kids.
Yeah, they have access to.
And so then we could add the by, right? And that's where you're listening, speaking, reading, writing.
That's,
Okay.
okay, that's the problem.
But you see what I
But
said?
it's,
Explore
it's,
decimal.
You have to infer.
Yeah.
Explore decimal cost. You have to infer the decimal cost. Because there's nothing about it.
Representing decimal riddles.
But if you picked up the toy card, it might be high.
Yeah, it's.
But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But you see where it's like,
You can only see it because it's speech,
Okay.
this is
which is an abstract concept.
very, very.
So, yeah.
All right, go ahead and finish up your conversations.
So I have to say, because of process of elimination, that this.
Did y'all figure out how to, where you're gonna embed it in the curriculum?
Yeah, we would say here, Unit 1, Pacing Tool 2, Day 4.
Okay.
So we see this learning objective, and we're thinking how to make
That's
it
what this is about.
listening, speaking,
There's
reading,
so,
writing
so
to
many
help build that
steps.
place value
That's why I wanted to
understanding.
kind of break these down today.
And one of the things
It's
that
not
we
just,
have
okay,
to,
let's look at these pictures and this is
use the
mechanical
expertise on the
assistance.
student, I think they
Yeah.
saw that, I don't know if you have yet or not.
Right?
I
Electrical
want
is
us
like.
explicitly embedded in every curriculum, every 2 weeks. This little, as you can see, this academic
Your process, how you went through that. Yes, I noticed.
Instead of hanging me out to dry, Carly. Jeez.
Yeah, she did share, we haven't talked through it yet.
Question as a testing as a teaching platform. It can be the Ignite, it can be the Reflect, it can be, you know, whatever part of the lesson we want it to be. It could be front loading. This is where we gotta go. And let's talk through it, and now let's teach it. I don't know what your question was.
Okay, so we do have a group that actually printed off their question, so I'm gonna hold this up and have them kind of go through.
It's not a good look on anybody.
Go through what their process was in their Foursquare.
Are you gonna model it?
I can hold it and you
You're
can
gonna
point.
ban it?
You, well, I think you're the
Especially
man.
if
It's
short
learner
story,
friendly.
absolutely. Okay, so we pulled up, look, I'm gonna have to get bounce back and forth between the readers and not, okay, so we pulled up a question, it's 5.8a, it's about energy, for 5th grade science, and the question itself states.
Looks like a really easy question, which is.
It does, because it's very simplistic and it's how it's written, but a student sees and hears a battery operated toy car moving across the room. What types of energy does the student use to see and hear the toy car? And you select 2 correct answers. So one more time, a student sees and hears a battery operated car moving across the room. What type of energy does the student use to see and hear the car? So those are the 2 components. So we went through the square, so kind of the prior knowledge needed. They did need to understand all of the energy types. That's obviously one that they had to look at, so that's one that they have to know. They also, they do need to know like what we would call like melt. Now, in this case, it isn't asking for energy transformation, but that is part of the new TEAC, so we anticipate that. So we just kind of mentioned that. So these actually kind of work interchangeably, so they do need to know all of this vocabulary. They also need to know examples of different types of energy, because the energy themselves is being put in a phenomenon. So from there, we went to our vocab, which we just talked about, the mechanical, thermal, electrical, energy, sound, and light. The strategy needed to analyze this. This is where we got a little bit, we're doing very well by the way. This is where we kind of got a little into the weeds. So what is the question actually asking? Because this is what we experienced in our small group. initially we recognize, immediately it says battery operated toy car. Okay,
Mechanical
And?
and electric, right?
so that's electrical and mechanical, except which immediately our kids are gonna recognize, because one of the emphasis is understanding that a battery is a form of electrical energy. So that's something that we have to get them to understand. But then it actually it deviates from that. This is where you get the distractor factor, because even though it's mentioned here and the kids are gonna immediately make that connection, it is not the answer they are looking for. So that is going to confuse them. What they actually are looking for is what they can hear and what they can see. So the two forms of energy that provide that for you, they have to recognize that they hear it, so it therefore is sound, probably the easier of the two, but they can see it, which is light energy.
But it doesn't say anything about light being there.
There is no light source provided in the example given. So they have to infer that there is light because they can see it, which is more of an abstract concept for our kids to kind of recognize immediately.
And another strategy is there's two answers. And
Correct.
Sometimes that's hard.
So there's two. So one of the things that we have them doing is prioritizing the answer choice. They're going to go back and specifically pull out the testing vocabulary within the question and the key factors in the question. Like, what are the things we're looking for, what they can see, what they can hear. And we're talking about highlighting the important components of the question and then maybe even underlining the things that seem important, but once we've read it, know that they're now distractors. Distinguishing between the two. So the last one, the distractor, we talked about that one. So that's pretty much where we kind of landed on. We recognize that even though the question seems very simplistic, the light most likely is going to throw them. I can pretty much guarantee our students are going to pick sound and electrical because the battery is mentioned. But we know that we're looking for sound.
Or
and light.
mechanical because it's moving, so.
Right.
And, I'm not a content expert in 5th grade science. First thing I said was sight and sound and light. Because I'm like, oh, the student. But then I'm like, oh, but wait, it's battery operated and it's moving, so that's electrical and mechanical. So I changed my answer. And then
And I'm just kind of grinning and be
she's
like,
just
"But
kind of
what
like,
is it?"
okay, Caroline, you have a couple of degrees here, what you doing? And then it's like, but wait, what does the student use? So that makes, rather than what's been really repetition, electrical, mechanical all year, it just goes down to, oh, he hears, so it's sound, and what could he see? Light or thermal? Thermal he can't see, he would feel that he.
So knowing that they had to have that base of prior knowledge to
Yes.
build on, that they had to have some academic vocabulary, that they're absolutely trying to distract us, where are we embedding these content strategy access connections?
So what we talked about doing is utilizing this, because for 5th grade specifically, and probably most in all grades honestly, but for 5th grade, we know that this is not a 5-minute thing. This is gonna be like a 10, 20, possibly even a 30-minute lesson when you roll out this type of strategy initially. So this would then need to replace one of our Tier 1 instructional days. So that's kind of what we're thinking right now. So that would be chapter 3 for us for 5.8a. And it would be there, and then either the next day or maybe at the end of that, they are then taking some of this, and even possible like a gradual release formula where they are looking for vocabulary first, and they're starting to do some of this independently, and then we talk about the distractors together. So those are some of the things we talked about, and kind of creating a model lesson for something like this, and then embedding it in all of my science PDs. Tell your friends.
Embedded in all of the movies.
And I think another thing is to look at the different contents to come together to get some of the same vocabulary and common language in the testing strategies across contents.
Okay. So to honor your time, we are going to continue this work when we come back from the max break. This is something that we'll dig into more. What is it that teachers need, that students need to access the content in order to show what they know? They know it, we know they know it. Our teachers and staff are giving incredible Tier 1 instruction, but what do we need to embed to have students be able to show that? What are these strategies that they need? So we'll continue that. Thank you again. As we kind of wrap up today, it already came up. There's some cross-curricular things that can happen here, and also thinking through that enrichment and intervention piece. When we're embedding these strategies, it needs to be across all of our groups, because all of them need to grow at least a year or more. So what are those opportunities and strategies that we're using all together? Again, thank you for being so engaged in the work today. I appreciate it. Anything from me?
Yay!
Sorry.
Thank you.